to kick it off, I want to let you know that the Grammy Music Education Coalition has one mission, just one. We're in our third year of making sure that all students not only have access to music education in public schools in the United States, but that they make music every week too. That's our mission, and that's what we're about. If you are interested in that, go to GrammyMusicEd.org and check out what's going on. And also, we gladly accept donations. Our services and our work support public music education. It's pretty simple. GrammyMusicEd.org/donate, or you can just text Music Ed to 50155. So without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest for this week. From last week and in this series, you'll recognize our incredible cellist, entrepreneur, ambassador for the Grammy Music Education Coalition as an artist, Sophia Bacelar, who will take us through a conversation with just an amazing American-French pianist. He's also an astrophysicist. He's a coder, a lot more, Dan Tepfer. I got to tell you, at the end of the session today, Dan's going to perform for us. I had the pleasure of taking time to listen to his Tiny Desk NPR concert this morning. Knocked me out. He's going to play just for us in a little while. So without any further ado, over to you, Sophia. And Dan, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I just want to give a little introduction. Dan is an amazing pianist, composer, improviser, scientist, coder, and much more. He was born in Paris to American parents, where he was raised and first began playing piano, and then studied astrophysics, correct, in Scotland? Mm-hmm. And then you were over at NEC, New England Conservatory in Boston, for your master's in piano. And from what I understand, you're equally fluent, in my experience, because I played with you, in jazz and classical. And you had a really interesting background of having a mother who was an opera singer, but your grandfather was a jazz musician?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if I would say I'm equally fluent. I feel like I have areas of classical music that I've spent a lot of time with and have gotten kind of a deeper knowledge of, especially the music of Bach.
Right.
But if you ask me to do the thing that like a real professional concert pianist is supposed to be able to do, which is like learn Rachmaninoff piano concerto in 4 days and then perform it from memory at Carnegie Hall or something, I don't have the chops to do that. That's not my bag. But I do love classical music, and I've loved playing with you. But I would say that like jazz is really the center of what I do. That's like, the thing where I've played with a lot of great jazz musicians and toured a lot playing jazz, and just improvisation is really what's dearest to my heart, I think.
Yeah, and that's actually how I first came to know you, because I think about, when did your Goldberg Variations album come out?
2011.
2011. So I first discovered you because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal written about you, and I thought it was just so fascinating, your story, where you came from, how you had this background of all these different influences, and you did this album where you played all the Bach Goldberg variations, and then you improvised after each one. And I listened to the album, and I completely fell in love with it. And I thought it was just such a novel way of presenting the variations, because every pianist plays them, everyone's recorded them, and it was just a really unique thing to do. And you still do it, right?
I do. Actually, I'm doing it this Sunday. I was supposed to do a concert in Indianapolis this Sunday, like a pretty big solo concert, and it was canceled. And the organizers, which I wish that every concert organizer was able to do this and wanted to, but I think it's mainly a question of ability. They're still paying me for the concert, and I'm going to do it as a stream from my place this Sunday afternoon at 3:30. So yeah, it's actually what I'm practicing right now is the Goldbergs, trying to get those back in my fingers.
Well, it was also really interesting, because when we got in touch, we met in a sort of funny way. We met on the street in Paris, and I didn't know who you were, but I realized who you were afterwards. And then I felt like I totally got cheated out of telling you how much I loved your music. We used to run into each other in Paris because you knew my ex-boyfriend. And then when I was, I think about 2021, I emailed you about playing together. And it's funny because I first knew about you through your Goldberg project. And what we ended up doing was kind of a spin on that, where I played the Bach first cello suite. And after each movement, you improvised on it. And I have to admit, that was one of the most kind of eye-opening experiences for me, because as a classical cellist, the way we're taught to interpret Bach is very much rooted in tradition, and I have the highest respect for quote-unquote historically informed players, but I personally don't consider myself one, and the way I play Bach, which is often criticized in the classical world, is much more improvisational, and I definitely took influence from that experience, and it sort of just freed my mind in a way. I remember even that first performance on stage, I felt this liberty to do all these things that I normally wouldn't when I had kind of been coming from this classical mentality. And also we did a couple other things, original pieces of yours, and we did something you had been starting to experiment already with the algorithmic work that you've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you did one piece with the disclavier, right?
Yeah, that's right, because we had a concert at Le Poisson Rouge in New York, and they happen to have a disclavier piano, which is what I have here at home. It's a piano made by Yamaha that is a totally fully normal acoustic piano, but in addition to that, it has a player piano mechanism, meaning it can play all by itself. Let's see that? Were you able to see that?
Yeah.
So yeah, for that concert, I wrote you a piece where I was playing on the piano, and it was using algorithms to play with me in real time. And then I wrote a part for you playing along with that. So that was a pretty fun interaction.
It was, and the more we played together, the more you got me to, for a classical musician, improvisation, some of us do learn it. I never learned it formally, and I was not comfortable with it at all, but definitely the more we did it, I think by the third concert we played together, we started just actually freely improvising.
Right, we did a free improv in Berlin, right?
I think we did, yeah, we did, and it was
it was really nice. I remember that.
Yeah, and it was such a great experience because I remember even the first one we did at LPR, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I need the notes written out, and you kept changing the score like up to about an hour before the concert, which is in a way terrifying, but also liberating for someone who always works off of a score. And I remember also you improvised. We played Le Grand Tango by Piazzolla, and you improvised the whole last section of it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Which was
I feel like that's an example of a piece, Le Grand Tango, where what's written down, I don't even feel like it's intended to be played exactly the way it's written, because some of the stuff doesn't even really make total pianistic sense. It kind of feels like this is the sound we're going for, and you can do it your own way.
Totally. And I think all of Piazzolla's music is kind of like that. I mean, Oblivion and Libertango, which we also did, they've been arranged for almost virtually every configuration, every instrument, and everyone plays it in a different key with different ornamentation. And it's really, I see it somewhat kind of like, it's almost like free domain music. Like, you can take it and do with it what you want, and you still capture the whole. Of course, you always recognize the piece, but every performer adds their own character to it.
Totally. Yeah. It's, Piazzolla was very influenced by Bach. Probably his greatest influence, and Bach is that way too, right? Where it's like this incredible kind of perfect information, perfect melodies and counterpoint, and the information is there. But to Bach, I don't think it made much difference what instrument things were played on. He often wrote something for one instrument and just used the same thing for a different instrument. And as a result, this pure information is so ripe for reinterpretation and reimaginings.
Yeah, I remember when I used to play piano, I played, there's a Bach double, is it a double piano concerto? There's a Bach piano concerto that's also a double violin concerto. And also I've done, for example, the two-part inventions, I've done them with a violinist where we just took each one hand and we didn't have to rearrange any of it. I actually was talking to Francesco Tristano last week live, and we were saying the same thing, that Bach's music is really universal in that sense, that it can work with anything. And it's also, I feel like it can also work with any genre. It's been adapted to so many different styles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just that pure information thing. Like, one of the things I've been doing during this quarantine that we're under
Hmm.
is I've been going through the Goldberg variations and playing them, and then getting my computer to turn them upside down. I wrote a
I
computer
feel
program that does this, and talk about pure information. I mean, like Bach, his information is so well structured that even if you turn it upside down, it still sounds amazing. And if anybody's curious, you can check out dantepfer.com/Bach upside down, all in one word, and that'll take you to the YouTube playlist where they're all there, and it's pretty amazing how you can transform this music and it
it.
still sounds amazing.
Yeah, I've been watching them on Twitter. It's been very, very fascinating.
Yeah, I need to continue. I've done half, and I need to do the second half now.
Yeah, that can be your next Goldberg thing.
Hmm.
So actually, you're very into computers and you're very into coding. How did you actually start computer programming?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of came up at just the right time because I was born in 1982, and so during the 80s was when personal computing really came into its own. Um, I think I may have lost you, Sophia. Are you there? Can you hear me? Um, are we still connected? Okay,
Yeah,
I
we're
think
still
we're
connected.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just saying that during the 80s is really when personal computing came into its own. And
Hmm.
so I was growing up as a kid, and I was always really into math and science. My dad is a biologist, so there are a lot of conversations about science growing up. And then he brought back like a really old Mac computer towards the end of the 80s, and I just started like writing little rudimentary programs on it when I was probably 8 or 9 or something like that. And then just through my teens, just something that I found so fascinating. I think it's like as a kid, you are very limited in your power. You can't really ask very many other people to do things for you. You can ask your parents to do things for you, but it's like really up to them. And you can maybe ask some friends, but you don't have any money. Like you can't really do that much.
Right.
And computers are suddenly like if you're programming computers, you have this army of little agents that will do whatever you ask them to do. And I found that totally fascinating as a kid. It just felt incredibly creative and powerful. It was like painting a picture, but times 1,000. So I was super hooked on it, and just kind of taught myself programming throughout my teens. And it was a time when there was very little information on the internet. I didn't really have internet anyway, and so I was getting like books about programming and learning how to do it that way. It's just something that always stuck with me, and I kind of dropped it in my 20s because I was just so focused on working on my music.
Hmm.
But then towards my late 20s and into my 30s, I I just came back to it with a vengeance. And then this Natural Machines project, which I released last year, um, is kind of the culmination of that, where I've written these computer programs that improvise with me and also generate graphics
Yeah.
in real time for what I'm playing. And it's that's been like a super deep dive for me into programming and all these other things that go along with it. And I just love it. It's like pure creativity.
Yeah, it's funny because during this quarantine, I thought I would give myself a task, and I actually recently started dabbling in learning Python.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
How's that working out for you?
really well. It's been interesting because I always knew coding was something that existed, but I always thought it had nothing to do with what I did, and I just never thought to learn it. I didn't need
Hmm.
to. And actually, about a year ago, we talked about this briefly, and you recommended a book to me, Life in Code. I was
Hmm.
just curious because I realized increasingly coding is, software sort of runs the world now. And to know nothing about it kind of felt like I was sort of handicapped. It's like not knowing how to drive or something.
Hmm.
So I figured I have the time now. I have a computer, why not learn? And one of the things that was really fascinating to me is that I know a lot of musicians who are also programmers or vice versa, in terms of what their primary field is. And a lot of musicians who have transitioned into programming, they've told me that, especially composers, it's very similar to writing music
Yeah,
because it's so intuitive. And that's something I realized immediately, because it's like problem solving. It's sort of like
exactly.
figuring out little puzzles.
Yeah.
And it's almost like writing counterpoint in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but I know you do all this stuff with generative art, and I see some of it behind you. Are
Oh
those?
yeah. Yeah, those are, you probably can't see those very well, but those are musical triads, actually going in and out of tune. But wait, I actually happen to have some here. Um, yeah, so these are 3D prints I had made
Mhm.
of these triads. So this is right here is a major triad in just intonation. So what that means is that instead of being tuned like the piano, which is in equal temperament, um, this right here is tuned in just intonation. And what that means is that each tone is related to the next by a whole number ratio. So with this particular major triad, in the time that the lowest note vibrates 4 times, the middle one vibrates 5 times, and the top one vibrates 6 times. So these are ratios 4 to 5 to 6. And here is a minor triad, and this is ratios 10 to 12 to 15. So it's actually, if you do the math, it's exactly the same as the major, just upside down,
Right.
which is, I don't know if you ever thought about that, but a minor
Yeah,
triad is the same as a major triad, but upside down, right?
exactly.
Right. Um, yeah, this is one of the things I've really enjoyed with computers, is like getting into the more mathematical aspects of how music works. And I think it can do a couple things. Like, first of all, it's just really interesting to understand what's behind this thing that we all love intuitively. But
Mhm.
also, it's an avenue for creativity. So for example,
Definitely.
if you understand that like a major triad is ratios 4 to 5 to 6, then that could create a piece. Like for instance, uh, I wrote a I wrote a piece years ago that's called 547, and it starts like this. Okay, so that whole intro is actually 4 to 5. It's like, so 4 in the time of 5, and that is a major third. That's the same as just playing like, if I play those two tones, in terms of the vibrations of those sounds, the bottom one is vibrating 4 times, and the time that the top one is vibrating 5 times. Okay, so if you slow that way down, you're literally going to get,
Right.
actually it's the other way around. It would be with the 4 times on the bottom and the 5 times on the top. So anyway, the point is, like, you look into the kind of structure and math behind the music, and that in turn creates new music.
Right.
Like a feedback mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us about Natural Machines. What was its inception, and what is it exactly? Because I've seen it live and it's incredible, but not everyone here has.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so Natural Machines, I call it Natural Machines because it's all about this idea that the music that I love, and that I think a lot of us love, is kind of equal parts rules um, and structure,
Mhm.
and emotion and intuition. Like, there's these two camps,
Right.
these two like kind of windows onto reality. There's this way of being very controlling about things and being very rigid, and there's this way of being much more intuitive and loose. And the great music, like the music of Bach, for example, or the music of John Coltrane, or the music of Monk, it's really living at the intersection. Radiohead, I would totally put in that camp. It's living at the intersection of those two things, and that's what creates the magic.
Mhm.
And I like to say that the music I love it lives at the intersection of the algorithmic and the spiritual.
Mhm.
So Natural Machines, it's like nature and machine. So in this case, there's the machine, like in this case, this clavier that I'm playing with, and also all the algorithms that are working on the computer. And there's me. I'm nature. I'm like intuition. I'm a human being improvising. So Natural Machines is all about exploring that intersection and also making it more explicit, like where the separation is, right? Because normally one person is dealing both with the rules and regulations and with the kind of more emotional, intuitive aspect of things. But in this case, I'm really separating it out. It's like my computer's taking care of the structural aspects in real time, and I'm being the more intuitive, emotional person. Like if I do that, it's like the computer is creating this structure that's going to give coherence to the music, because even if I just play those two notes, like that high note and that low note, because of how the computer's filled it in, you feel that they belong together much more so than if I just went, so so that, there's a lot of that in the music of Bach, where like there's a lot of degrees of freedom in his music, in the sense that he doesn't really have rules dictating what kind of melody he should write. But on the other hand, once he's written a melody, the rules of counterpoint, and in addition, other rules he might set for himself, like the rules of canon or the rules of fugue, are putting all kinds of constraints on it and constraining how the other voices are going to respond to it. And so that's very similar to what I just did there. It's like I'm providing an impetus, and then rules are kind of filling things in and giving the whole thing structure and coherence.
Mm-hmm. So during the live performances, how is it structured? Do you have a certain, I know they're always improvised. Is it a certain number of pieces, or how does it work?
In live performance, yeah. So the project, yeah, this is a really good thing to get into. The project is totally about free improvisation, right? So this is really important. Like every time I sit down to play Natural Machines, I'm improvising the music from scratch, but the rules are the same, right? So it's like, instead of writing pieces, I'm writing the way these pieces work.
Okay.
I'm writing the rules governing the pieces, but I'm going to be improvising in different ways every time. So every time I play this live, it's like the music's totally different. But again, these rules remain the same. Maybe as if Bach had said that, like, okay, every time I do a concert, I'm going to improvise a new canon at the third in this key. So you do something different every time, but the constraint remains the same.
So basically you have a set of algorithms that you always go through.
Yeah, and I keep experimenting with new ones. Actually, just recently I developed one to play and visualize the orbits of planets. So if you think of planetary systems, right? Like if you think of the sun and the Earth and Mars, for example, Earth goes around the sun in 365 days, and Mars is a little further and goes around in almost twice as much. So I think it's a little under 700, if I remember right. So if you think about the frequencies of them, right? Earth goes around once a year. That's like 1. And Mars takes almost 2 years to go around. So it's a little less than 2, right? So it's like 1 to a little less than 2. And in music, 1 to 2 is an octave. Like if you take this frequency, which is 440, and you double it, and you go that. So 440 meaning it vibrates 440 times a second. If you double that and you go to 880 times a second, you actually get this note. Okay, so you double frequency, you get an octave. So in other words, Mars and Earth, they're in almost an octave. They're actually like in a major seventh. Mars and Earth are like, okay. I mean, Earth and Mars, I should say, because, well, no. Right, so this would be Mars and this would be Earth.
Right. Because
Earth is going faster around around the sun than Mars is. So what was I going to say? So my point is just that I'm still writing algorithms. So this is one I wrote just last week, where I made it so you can actually see the planets going around the star. Because not only can we do this for our own solar system, but now we know, because of like how advanced exoplanet science has become. It's the science of studying planetary systems outside of our own, so around other stars than the sun. We can actually know the orbits of these planets around other stars and know their frequencies and how they relate to each other. And there's some really interesting ones, like the TRAPPIST-1 system that was discovered just a few years ago, where the planets are so close to each other that they're actually orbiting in very close harmony to each other. Like they're almost in these whole number ratios that I was mentioning earlier, which are like the purest form of harmony between tones, is when they're related by whole number ratios. I think I might have lost you for a second there, Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my connection cracked a little bit.
No, it's all good. But yeah, so hopefully you got that. So anyway, the point is, yeah, it's an ongoing project. Like anytime I have new ideas for algorithms, I try to make time to write them and experiment with them, because a lot of the appeal of natural machines for me is like the newness of it. It's this thing where, like, this instrument that I've been playing my whole life, once I put these algorithms to it, it just feels like a completely new instrument, and it's incredibly exciting for me.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's especially striking to see with the generative art when you see it live, because for those of you who are watching and haven't seen it, you always have a projection on which you can see the visual representations of all of this. And that's something that I think it's just extremely captivating, because there's something about kind of engaging all the different senses that really brings you into the experience. And that's something that I've realized when I've seen this show. I think I've seen it twice, actually. I saw it at LPR and at National Sawdust. So that was really a wonderful experience. And
I love what you're saying about that, the engaging the different senses together.
Yeah,
especially when they're like super closely related, right? When it's like
exactly.
when you can feel in your body that the visuals are representing exactly the same thing in real time as the music, it creates this kind of a synesthetic effect or something, like where everything's working together. I think I lost you again. I wonder, yeah. I think a lot of people are using the internet nowadays, and it's getting in the way of bandwidth, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, sorry, I caught most of that. But yeah, it's definitely, I think it makes for a more complete immersive experience. And that's something that humans just intuitively connect with much more. Anyway, I know that you're gonna head over to Facebook soon and do a little performance for us.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some natural machine stuff, and I'll have the graphics. I'll have the graphics up.
Amazing.
Yeah, I figured this way out. Figured out this way to do like a picture-in-picture thing where it's gonna like show up here.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing these live streams. So
I was telling them earlier that they were saying that you had like the best tech setup, and I was like, I have no doubts with Dan that he figured out the coolest way to do a live stream.
It's been a fun challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a problem solver. So anyway, thank you so much for chatting, and we will all go over to Facebook on the Grammy Music Education Coalition's page to check out your performance of Natural Machines.
Yeah, we got a question from Janai Bridges. So do you guys know who she is?
Janae.
Janae, yeah. Sorry, not Janai. Janae.
Janae.
Do you know Janae? Sophia? Oh,
Janae
didn't we go to her concert together?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were at her Carnegie Hall concert together at Weill Hall.
We ran into each other at her concert.
That's right.
And yeah. Actually interviewed Janae on here about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Awesome. So are you still making the algorithm inspired jewelry?
Yeah, I am. So, and she said, where can we purchase? I promise this is not a setup. First of all, hi Janae, great to hear from you, because you're awesome. And yeah, so I've been making, so these things are, the major and minor triads, they're 3D printed, and you can actually get them. It's something that I'm just getting up online right now. But within a day, I'm going to have just if you go to my website, dantepfer.com, there's going to be like a merch section. And under there, you can get these like in this size or as like these earrings that are in silver or just like red plastic. They look pretty cool that way.
They are cool.
Yeah,
I've seen them.
it's been a fun little journey making that stuff.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much. And I'll let you get going because I know you have to do a little bit of setup. But I look forward to hearing you play, as
Yeah,
always.
thank you, Sophia. Thanks for having me on the show, and
Of course.
thanks for your awesome music. It's been always
Oh,
been super
thank you.
fun playing with you.
Yeah, we should do it again once social distancing is over.
Yeah, can't wait. Oh, but I've been figuring out a way um, for people to play together in real time, as long as we're not too far from each other.
I
Like I
saw
think
that.
you're in New Jersey, right?
I'm in Jersey now, but I'll go back to New York eventually.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should try it because I've been doing it with my friend Jorge Roeder, who's an amazing bassist, and it's really
Yeah.
working. Like you can play. We're getting like maybe 20 millisecond latency,
Hmm.
and you can actually feel like you're improvising together. And you can play in time together. It's pretty amazing.
I saw that on Twitter as well, and I was like, of course, Dan would be the person to solve latency.
Well, I haven't solved it. It's
I
something
know.
that other people have been working on for a long time. But like I
Right.
got it working using this program called Jack Trip. It's not totally obvious, but yeah, it's. I'm pretty excited about that. I want it to get more robust and do more of it.
Well, we'll definitely test it out.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Well, we're in for a treat, I think, Sophia. It's
We
really
are.
great to have Dan here and you and to continue this series. We're so grateful. Thank you so much. And again, everybody, we have Sophia Bacelar, cellist, Grammy Music Education Coalition Artist Ambassador here. She's hosting this series on Instagram Live every Thursday, and she'll be coming back more weeks. I'm super grateful about that. So keep an eye peeled to our social media feeds at Grammy Music Ed, and you'll learn more about what comes up each week. Conversations that are just as fun as this one, and we've got more coming. And again, just for those of you who weren't here at the top of the session, in addition to our gratitude to Dan and to Sophia, the Grammy Music Education Coalition has one mission. We're an affiliate of more than, we have an affiliate organization of more than 70 that has come together around a movement which is focused on a singular thing, and that's making sure not only access is available for music education in public schools, but that our students also get to make music. That's what we do. That's the one thing that we do, and we're so happy that you're here. Sophia, any closing words from you before I point folks over to Dan for his performance?
No, I mean, thank you for having me do this. It's been really fun for me because I get to not only connect with a lot of my friends who are all wonderful artists, but also kind of, introduce them to our audience. And I think we've had a variety of very different people every week so far, and we're going to continue to. And it's interesting to see that, we're all musicians, but it all sort of manifests itself in a different way. We all use the same creativity to explore different areas, and at the same time, we're very different, but we're very similar.
Well, thank you so
Can I
much.
jump in
I
here
think
for just
later
1
I'll probably
second?
jump in and
Sure.
ask Dan. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to react for just a second to what you were saying earlier. Um, is my video frozen?
It is.
Might be, but we
Uh,
can hear you.
yeah. Well, yeah. I just wanted to react to what you were saying earlier about education, and just to say that I'm so on board with that mission. I think music education is so valuable for just giving people the opportunity to experience what it's like to be in harmony with other human beings, even if you never bring it into your professional life and never make any money from it. It's just so obvious in all my conversations with so many people, and also just knowing about the history of music education, that it enhances everyone's life to a really great degree. And I think it's a real tragedy in the United States how much music education has declined in public schools. And I really commend you guys for having that as your central mission to bring it back.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Well, we'll
Thanks.
gladly accept you if you're interested as an artist ambassador for the coalition. I was just thinking as you were showing us your 3D prints, it's too bad we students don't have a 3D printer in all of their homes, but maybe we should have a conversation about putting something together that kids could do from home with their teachers. Given your background, what great examples and fun for sure.
I love
And
that.
yet, and yet to your point about, I'll just give the high level. There are 51 million public school students in America, um, but 4 million of the 51 don't have access to music education today. And 3 of those 4 million are underserved students, schools that maybe aren't getting enough support. And that's what we're about. It's about closing the access and equity challenge that we all have. That's why we do what we do. And Sophia, Dan, and all of our ambassadors have a big part in helping us get the word about this secure support. So,
I mean, if you think about like the history of jazz, it's literally the history of, a marginalized community
mhm.
getting access to instruments and education through public school and developing a revolutionary art form.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that's not the whole story. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but that is an essential part of it. A lot of these guys that are super important to me, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, they got their first instruments in school, and that music would not have been what it became without that system.
Yeah, and clearly we know, I mean, we do research on music participation in the school districts with which we work the past 2.5 to 3 years with the School District of Philadelphia and with the Nashville Public Schools, Metro Nashville Public Schools. And, there's research in the field on a smaller scale that evidences things like when students are involved in music education, they attend school more. We also know, and we work on this with our school districts, and we'll be sharing as a thought leader in the space, things like when programming, meaning the type of classes in the curriculum are appealing, or we say culturally relevant to young people, they are more interested and engaged in being music, and the halo effect of all of that. So I often say, well, we're the Grammy Music Education Coalition. We are not necessarily about creating the next generation of Grammy nominees or winners. That's a halo. And what Dan said is very specifically what we're about. It's like the more young people that make music, whether they're going to be a surgeon, a doctor, they're going to be Dan, Sophia, me working in education advocacy, or working in finance, doesn't matter. Music makes life better for everybody. And also the research shows that participating in music, and I'm sure the 3 of us did this, especially when you're an adolescent, middle and high school, research shows that changes the biology of your brain for better forever. That's Nina Krause's research at Northwestern University. So
Of course.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate you guys being a wonderful model for this. And Sophia, I can't wait for the next session. Dan, thanks for jumping into that part of the conversation. I look forward to talking more with you about this. And so now to conclude this portion of the stream, I want to point everybody to another platform. We're going to move over to facebook.com /Grammy Music Ed, facebook.com /Grammy Music Ed. And Dan's going to do a pretty substantial and fun performance for all of us there. Sophia and Dan, we can't wait for that. Thank you so much. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to conclude the stream here. Head over to facebook.com /Grammy Music Ed, and Dan's going to do some amazing playing for us. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Bye.
Thank you.